I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is All the Mods 9 to the Sky. So today starts a new era in this mod pack, and that era is going to be going towards the All the Mods star. Now, I have worked my way through quite a few things, getting all of the sieving set up, and also diving into some mods that technically aren't even in the list at the moment for the All the Mods star. Today, I really need to start focusing on those specific mods that we're going to have to get through in order to actually complete the star, as most things in the list of the All the Mods star is, well, very simple to gather. It just requires you to progress through said mod. For example, we will have to go after the Gaia Guardian from Botania. We'll also have to get at least a tier 4 blood altar set up from Blood Magic. And we'll also have to go through the progression that is Forcecraft. And well, a theme you may have noticed about all of those, yeah, you've seen it. They're all magic mods. And that's because in this pack, I've really been kind of heavily focusing specifically on the tech stuff. But now it's definitely time for magic. And that's if you can actually call Botania magic. Honestly, it just really depends. And so today we're going to be diving into the world of Botania. And now we've already got a little bit of Botania set up because we needed to at least get some mana steel, which required us to set up the very basics a few episodes ago of the Botania setup. And believe it or not, this setup that you see behind me can be scaled up quite a bit. In this particular setup, I'm just using one Endoflame and I was feeding it some coal. And an easy way to automate coal is by using an andesite funnel. And you can simply take some coal and you can place it inside of here, and it will then pop up one at a time. And then this is able to consume that and then fill a mana pool. And in this case, the mana pool is now completely filled. Now, this is all well and good, but, well, we're going to have to fight a boss by the end of today's episode. And maybe more than one boss? That's right, because Botania technically has a tier 1 boss and a tier 2 one. Now, judging by the flower on my head, yes, Botania is technically one of my favorite mods of all time. And that also means that I have, well, gone through this mod quite a bit. And so this progression is going to be very accelerated. However, keep in mind, I'm not going to exclude some really awesome ways of automating Botania, especially since we have the power of applied energistics on our side. This is going to make automating runes so easy. Now, to recap some of the basics of getting started with Botania, you need to get yourself a pure daisy, which is 4 flowers that go inside of a petal apothecary. And that's pretty straightforward. Now, you also probably want to make yourself an Endoflame, which is what I'm using to generate some basic power, and you can definitely add up more of these, and then use a mana spreader, in which you would get from converting logs and stone using that pure daisy into living wood and living rock, and you should be able to make yourself a mana pool and that spreader. That will get you the base amount of mana that is going to be needed to start. Now, something else to note, there is an AE add-on that is in this pack, but the more I looked into it, the more I realized, well, you're not intended to use it, at least early game. You have to get through the entirety of Botania in order to even be able to make the housing for applied botanistics, which does give you a Fluix mana pool that you can use, so you can actually like send mana into these drives, and I'm assuming use it. And then there's also a peer-to-peer, which allows you to send mana from one location into another thing very quickly, much like a spark, but apparently faster. Man, the recipes are so expensive that by the time that you even get to the point to where you're going to be using them, you may not even be using them anymore, because you've probably already built a significant infrastructure from the Botania mod itself. I mean, but it probably has its uses for like later game things, especially if you really want to start pumping out a ton of source around your base. You know, where there's a will, there's definitely a way. Now, speaking of a way, I want to set up a way to automate runes. Now, runes are probably one of the most painful things to craft in Botania. And that's because they have to be hand done through this runic altar. But we might be able to get away with not doing them by hand, and we can actually send the items required into this runic altar, and then we can use applied energistics to request those items and have them automatically dropped on here. Because believe it or not, this altar has the intended automation feature in mind. That automation can be done through the open crate. So we would just need to technically place an open crate above this, and then we would have to make sure that our recipes are set up in a very specific way. Now, something to keep in mind with this, we have to send mana into the runic altar, and the way we do this is through a mana spreader. And so I should be able to take and link by shift right clicking and link our mana spreader to the altar. And with these connected so close like this, it's almost going to seem like it's instantly happening, but this can also send at a distance. Now, the reason I want to get into these runes is because it allows us to make some very powerful flowers that are actually added in here by an extended mod. I'm definitely going to clean this up later, but for right now, this is basically what the concept is going to look like. We're going to have some channels that are ran over here, and that is going to go into an extended pattern provider. And this is just going to give us way more pattern slots because there's definitely more than 9 individual runes, which we're going to end up needing to make. Now, we're also going to want to have an advanced item collector on here, and this is going to need to be set up into whitelist mode because we are going to specify inside of our filter slot here what runes we're actually going to want to be collected. Now, the thing that's going to make all of this work is on the actual pattern provider itself. We're going to need to set this to this mode right here, locked crafting. So lock it until the primary crafting result is returned. So this is only going to send one pattern at a time, making this one of the easiest ways to automate this runic altar. Now, another thing that I'm going to need to set up is going to be the modular router. So I'm going to go ahead and place my modular router in here, and this is going to just continuously try and click the wand of forest onto the runic altar. So I will just go ahead and put this in the buffer, and then we need to tell this what to actually do. So by default, it should be fine. It's just going to right click, and it's going to right click on the front. And that should be pretty straightforward. It's just going to continuously try to right click that, and it will only complete a recipe whenever it has the desired item. So now we get to start focusing on the pattern. And so just like how I defined the summoning altar pattern with the last item, making sure that it was the last thing in the recipe, that's pretty much how this is going to work as well. Now, for example, notice that I'm going to need all of these ingredients and also living rock. So I can go ahead and let's say make a pattern, for example, for a fishing rod. I can make sure that I have sugarcane. We'll eventually have automation for the mana powder and mana steel, but for right now, this is the recipe. But notice it's a little bit off. We actually want that living rock to not be there in the recipe. So let's go ahead and take some bone meal. The order that the rest of the stuff is in doesn't really matter. So we just want to make sure that this is the last thing in the recipe. I don't know if I can just go ahead and add that like that, but I'm going to put this here and just making sure, like I said, that's at the bottom of the list. And once we have this, this should technically work. We want that living rock to be the last thing in the list because it's the last thing we want to drop on the bottom here. So with that, we can go ahead, I guess, and request one. We do need to make sure we have mana steel. So I have a couple of it, and we also want, for example, some redstone, and we want to drop that in here so that way we have some powder as well. And so if all is well, we should now be able to go to Botania and craft ourselves a rune of water. Now, we are going to have to handpick this up, but notice it did put everything in to craft, and it put the living rock right on the middle, and it has finished it. And all we have to do to technically automate it is just add this to the whitelist filter and then toss it in, and it has now finished the craft. That is amazing. Now, there is one major flaw with this particular setup, and it's mostly around the advanced item collector. Now, I have all of these individual runes placed in here, but the problem is if I go now to craft, for example, a summer rune, what it's going to do is it's going to throw out all of those other runes, and this would just collect them mid-drop because of how fast it is. So I think eventually we'll probably have to have these separated or use a collector from another mod that will allow us to get some redstone signals. Now, something I don't know, I don't remember if this actually emits a redstone signal. If it does, that would be fantastic. Then we could use that inside of any other sort of collector. For example, Modular Routers has a way of actually collecting things. So what I want to do right now is I want to craft a rune of summer. So I can go ahead and select that. That's going to actually use the other runes, by the way, and those runes will get recycled. They don't get like destroyed or anything like that. So let's try that again. Rune of summer. There we go. That's going to send all of those items out, and then it's going to toss the other ones back out into the world. So all of these other runes within rune crafting do get recycled, as you can see right there. Now, a quick and dirty solution to this whole rune collection problem is probably going to be resolved by using modular routers. And this is going to make life a whole lot easier for us. And the way that I want to do this is I want to use 3 modular routers for this because these have an individual buffer slot. They can only pull in one at a time. And with this sending a signal while crafting means that when it's done crafting, we can use that to send a redstone pulse, and then we can have these pulsed. Now you want to make sure you have these max upgraded with some max speed and also some max stack, because we want this to be as quick as possible in between the crafting operations. Now, luckily for us, it won't actually send out another set. So once the pulse is initially triggered, it's going to collect everything, and then it's going to send again after these have collected. So we don't have to worry about any sort of overlap in this particular setup. And the way that we can do this pulse is we can create a NOT gate. So I'm going to go ahead and detect that redstone signal. Just imagine that this is the redstone signal while it's actively crafting, and then like this, it then just pulsed a redstone signal. And initially, it's not going to have a pulse because we are going to chain the redstone into the back like this. So it's technically been pulsed right now, but it won't pulse again until an operation happens. And then when it's finished, immediately when it's finished, it will then send a pulse using this NOT gate. Very, very simple, and these are all set to redstone pulse mode, meaning that whenever it receives its initial pulse, it will then perform this operation that goes on here. And so what's going to happen is it's going to use a vacuum module that is filtered, by the way, with those runes in it to a whitelist, and then it's going to send the items that it collects directly into the pattern provider. And the cool part is, the reason I have 3 is most of the rune recipes will only ever output back into the world 3 runes. But later on, when we get into the more advanced ones that need 4, for example, well, we can just add another modular router onto this list. Now for the moment of truth, let's see if this actually works. So to be able to do this, I'm going to craft up a summer rune, and we'll see, will this summer rune actively work? Notice it did not collect anything, but it should collect as soon as this is done pulsed. And we notice the redstone is not active actually, but it was enough to send a pulse, and notice all of the items ended up going in, which is just what we want. And I guess this is something else that to note. This emits a comparator signal of 1 while crafting, and it looks like on initial complete, that is when it actually sends a full 2 redstone signal. I'm gonna have to see this again. Now, interesting. So yes, upon completion, when it does the completion part, it will send out a redstone signal of 2. And that could be used, I mean, we are using it right here technically, but that could be done in a much simpler way. We actually wouldn't need a NOT gate and stuff like that, because we could use that signal and then continue that signal on only during that initial moment. But I do like the idea of this particular setup that we have here, mainly because it's scalable. So now with that rune crafting setup, there's only 1 more rune that we're actually going to need, and I've already got all of the stuff set up for this. We just need runes of fire, rune of summer, and a couple of diamonds, and we can make ourselves a rune of pride. And this should allow us to make probably the most insane flower that we can make, which is the wither aconite, which is going to gobble up nether stars like it says and produce a ton, and I mean a ton of mana for us. So we just need to craft ourselves a rune of pride. And so a little bit of, let's see, mana diamonds. And this is why we needed an initial amount of mana, because diamonds, these mana diamonds do take a bit of mana in order to actually craft. So yes, there we go. That took quite a bit in order to get the 16 that we have. But if we now go into runes, we should be able to craft the rune of pride. Let's go ahead and let's try 2 and see what this does. So when this initially crafts, you can see it sends out the items right here. And then it should complete, and before we get a new set, it should have pulled the items back in. Oh man, there we go. And then it sends out a new set, and there it goes. It just took a moment for it to react, but there we have it. Perfect. And so that should be the exact 2 that we need. Now we're also going to need ourselves a wither rose, and well, there is a way to get a wither rose normally by having some mobs, of course, you know, be killed by the wither, but we should be able to actually buy the wither rose from this fella right here at just a cost of an emerald or so, and we can buy wither roses on demand. Man, you gotta love the market. I don't know what we would do without this in a skyblock. And now all we have to do is jump into our petal apothecary, drop a couple of these things in, including the petals, our seed, and there we go. We now have ourselves a wither aconite. Now for this setup, what I plan on doing is utilizing these 2 for now with basic spreaders. Of course, that is going to be our big bottleneck, right? Is the spreaders themselves. But we can take a barrel and we can actually place our nether stars in this barrel utilizing an andesite funnel just by right clicking on it. Notice it's going to send up, and that should send out nether stars that we put in. Now, I want my mana spreaders, I think, to be above the actual roses themselves, which are going to be down here, which still should be able to collect from this. And then what I want right here is going to be the actual mana splitter. And this is going to help me split all of that mana between all 4 of those mana pools right here. And all we have to do now is just make sure that we have all of these linked. So I'm going to go ahead and link this and make sure it's linked to the splitter itself. That's why they're kind of raised up a little bit. So if we place down our roses, we can place them right here. And these should also be linked to the closest mana spreader, just like that. And then, well, we have nether stars. So we just need to take our nether stars and place them in here. And what should happen is these should hopefully consume that nether star. If I have to lower it, I might have to lower this down. Let's actually test it real quick. Do these consume off the ground? Okay, so they do consume off the ground, interestingly enough. What's wild is it didn't actually consume the nether star, it doesn't seem. Okay, I actually have no idea then. So does this need to be directly on it? Oh, okay. So it needs to be like directly on in order for it to drain the power out of it. That's going to be an interesting way, how am I going to automate that? Oh, that's so interesting. It takes durability off of the nether star, causing it to become what is known as a faded version. Interesting. So yeah, honestly, to automate this, it's still going to be create andesite funnels because of the way these work. These can actually detect if there's an item on the ground. So just to kind of show you here, if I was to pick this up and I have, for example, a couple of faded here, if I put these in, you're going to notice this one's going to stay here. It's going to stay here perfectly because there's already an item out. And that's exactly what we want to happen. And so I can take some stars now and just like split 32 here and 32 here. And this will probably last forever. Oh boy. And so to kind of improve on these mana spreaders, I am going to use a potency lens. This is going to allow it to send more mana per burst. And that might actually help a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to help because, well, these actually produce way more mana than these basic mana spreaders can use. But it is going to actually speed up the amount of time that it takes for these pools to fill up. You know what? We actually might be able to combine the velocity and potency lens with a slime ball, and we can make a composite lens, and this would be even better, giving us faster transfer speed. There we go. That is going to definitely make those a lot faster. Now, while I wait for that to fill up, I do want to make a few things that are really cool, and that's pasture seeds. So I can actually now change this grass into something that I've actually wanted to change it to for a while. So I can take my pasture seed and I can choose kind of what I want this to be. And I actually want to go for the infused pasture seed right here. And so this is going to give me a cyan kind of color. And by placing this in, this will then spread to adjacent blocks. And now this grass no longer seems out of place. It fits definitely a lot more into this whole build. Just like that, I now have 4 full mana pools. That was incredibly quick, by the way. And so with those 4 full mana pools, we can now use this to make Terrasteel. That's right. Terrasteel, and we should also be able to make a seed for said Terrasteel, which is going to make it even easier to get through Botania. Now, to make the Terrasteel, we're going to need a terrestrial agglomeration plate. So this is very, very simple to craft, but it does have a multi-block that we're going to need to set up in order to get this done. As you can see by the task complete, it actually kind of gave it away. We're going to have some lapis and some living rock. So you know what? I think I'm going to place it right here. So I just have to set up like this, the area, and we're going to need 5 of this living rock in an X pattern like so, and then lapis on the sides, and then our agglomeration plate directly in the middle. And this right here will give us the thing we need. Now, I've seen a lot of people do this, and I do not recommend it. Don't try to use a mana spreader to power this. Instead, use a spark. So you'll just shift right click a spark directly on top, and you can see the spark is right here. And then directly next to this, make sure you place this close by to your actual mana pools. Just simply place sparks on top of your mana pools. And believe me, you will not regret this because this will make this craft incredibly fast. So now with this, the only thing left to do is to make our Terrasteel, and this is going to require some mana steel. We also need mana diamonds and mana pearls, and you can just right click this directly on here. And you can see how quickly that just sends that mana over and immediately crafts this thing. It is so fast. Dancer in the Dark, apparently, is what we get. Now, we're going to want to immediately use these, by the way, to make 4. We're going to want to make 4 so we can make these Terrasteel seeds. That is just going to make crafting Terrasteel so much easier, as we can throw it into our very, very OP phytogenic insulators. Now, we do have 4 mana pools, and something to note, each time you craft this Terrasteel, it's going to take, technically, half of one of these pools. So it took, in this particular case, it only took a little bit of each, but that's kind of why we have 4 of them. So this should easily allow me to craft enough to make 4 of these ingots, especially with 4 full mana pools. And voila, I now have 4, and here comes the seeds. So yes, I should just be able to toss that here, and there we go. Seeds are now being produced, and we now have access to this. So what I want to immediately do now is I want to gain access to the Alfheim dimension. I'm actually going to place my portal right here inside of my villager area. Now, this isn't a dimension. Well, it does have a dimension in this particular pack, but it's not a dimension that you might be familiar with. We're going to actually do some trades with the people because we're not allowed to actually go there. Well, I keep saying that, but not technically yet. There is a mod in here that does actually give you access to going into the Alfheim dimension. But in this particular case, I'm just going to place down our gateway core, and this is going to be the multi-block structure that we're going to use in order to gain access to said dimension. So it is a 3x3 portal that you're going to need, and then you're going to need a core in the middle with these glimmering living wood, just like this, in the center portions. You don't actually need the corners, by the way, and you also need the glimmering in the top. And so we just continue to build this up, making sure that we put the components in the appropriate areas. And then I'm going to go ahead and trim the fat here. And just like that, this is technically the portal frame. It's very simple. And then I like to, in the corners, add my mana pools. These are going to contain our mana for doing the crafts. And then we need 2 Natura pylons. And these are going to go directly onto the mana pools. And there we go. We have our portal that is going to allow us to open up a gateway into the Alfheim dimension. And now something that's really cool is to be able to build this, you really only need 1 Terrasteel ingot, technically. Now we have access to an unlimited amount of them, but in reality, you only need 1 to set up this portal, which is very nice because we could have just made it directly off the 1. Now, I do need to get mana into these pools, and one of the easiest ways to transfer mana around is by simply filling up a mana tablet from one mana pool to another. We can toss this in here, and then we can actually right click this, or shift right click, to say transfer out of mana pool into the tablet. And we can actually speed this up by using a watch of, or not a watch filling time, a time in the bottle in this case. And notice that has then stopped. And so we should be able to take this out. And then what I can do is toss it into this pool and then give this a little bit of time, and that is going to transfer out of here very quickly. Now that I have a little bit of mana in both of these pools, I can simply right click on here, and that is going to open up the gateway. And so now we can start to trade some of the more advanced items that we're going to need in order to do the actual Gaia battle. So one of the first things we can throw in here is going to be mana steel ingots. And then on the outside here, it's going to just spit out all of the exchanged items. So I just imagine like the little guys inside of that dimension just receiving it and going, ooh, I'm going to go ahead and take that. Now, we also want to toss our MythicBotany in here. And now we have an upgraded MythicBotany that is going to have some other entries, including the ability for us to build out a portal to fight the Gaia Guardian. Well, not exactly a portal, but more like a summoning altar kind of thing. Before we can even think about going after the Gaia Guardian, we're going to have to progress through a little bit more of MythicBotany, and that's because it has changed the recipe. So to be able to make your Gaia pylon, you actually also now need to make an Alfsteel pylon. And we're going to need 4 of these Alfsteel pylons because we also need 4 of these Gaia pylons. And so now this is an entirely different progression that is going to require us to make Alfsteel ingots. And these are made inside of another sort of infuser that was just like our agglomeration plate we just made. But this one is going to require some different blocks you see down here. And this also requires its own little progression. And that special block is none other than Shimmer Rock. And the way we get Shimmer Rock is through the Bifrost blocks mixed with Living Rock. And the way we get Bifrost blocks is through Alf Glass using a Rod of the Bifrost. And the way we get Alpha Glass is by tossing in Mana Glass into the portal. So you can see where I said there's its own little progression. It's all very easy to do, by the way. And this is honestly kind of a progression that shows you, hey, here's all of these cool building blocks that you can craft. So after crafting up some Alpha Glass, I can now make all of these. So not too difficult, honestly, to get this all set up. And there we go. We now have Shimmerrock, and we really just need 5 of them for right now, but you can use this Shimmerrock to make a fabulous mana pool, which has some RGB, as you can see right here, that rotates through. So I think now the hardest part is just simply requesting all of these individual runes, because we need all of the individual, like, seasonal runes, and then we also need the Rune of Asgard. So now I don't have all of these auto-crafted, but we do have enough here that I should be able to just request them with the patterns that are in here, and I should be able to grab these out and make sure to insert them back in, and that will make crafting these at least a little easier than doing them by hand. And there we go. I think this is the Asgard one that it's actually crafting up now. I will have to collect up some of the resources that it has, that it's going to pop out of here. Potentially, actually, we have most of these. Yeah, you can see manually needing to do this. It's not a huge deal though, because we now should have everything I need. I think. Yeah, the only thing left to do is toss in some living wood, and we should get back some dreamwood logs, which is great because this is also the material that we need in order to upgrade our mana spreaders. So perfect. After crafting some glimmering dream log, we now can make our infuser from MythicBotany. And so just like our other side, I'm going to be placing a spark on this, and it is going to go right on the side. And there we go. So now we have this set up. I just need 1 spark, and we should be ready to go. Place this directly on top, and now inside of this one, I can craft up those higher tier materials. And if I remember correctly, I think this needs a dominant spark on it in order for it to actually work. So now I should be able to place all of these ingredients in, and there we go. So yes, it does require, from what I remember, a dominant spark. And look at that. That is sending to it. This is going to use 1.5 pulls to make this one. And there is not, as of right now, a seed for this material. Woo, that is a lot of mana, and we're definitely going to need to upgrade our mana spreaders to be able to support that. And there we go. This is what we now need in order to fight the Gaia Guardian. And just like that, I've also upgraded these, and these are now spitting mana incredibly fast. But it does get faster than this, but to do that, we actually have to fight the Gaia Guardian. So that is our next step, and I have everything here to be able to do that, including an area I just built up to be able to do this. So these are what we need. We need the Steel pylons, and so I am going to need all of my nuggets here that we just got from crafting that steel. And then we take the Steel pylon here, and we have to turn it into this version, which is the regular Gaia pylons. Perfect. So now that we have these Gaia pylons, I can then go over here, which I've built out a big platform, and we can now build out the structure that is going to be where we summon the Gaia Guardian. Now, under the Ritual of Gaia tab, you can click Visualize, and this allows us to actually see this more in action. So I should be able to go down here and place in my anchor point. If I can get this to, I probably have to place a couple of blocks down here, don't I? So yes, so this is not where I want it. So I can actually unclick this by clicking that button. And I'm going to have to break this and place it down a block. Good thing we have flight, because that makes this a whole lot easier. I like to have the beacon at least level with everything. So perfect. So now, there we go. So now we have this built out, and I'm going to place this in, and we can actually start to see where these go. So I'm going to have to make sure these are raised up, and then we're almost ready for a Gaia fight. And so now with all of this set up, it's the moment of truth. As the time is actively changing, let's go ahead and summon our first boss. So to do this, we use Terrasteel, and then I have my red guitar, so we should be ready. I just simply need to right click, shift right click. There we go. And that's going to summon in the boss. Now, I don't believe we will be able to insta-kill this, but we should be able to chip away pretty easily at the boss. Also, it looks like it removed our vanilla potion effects. That's kind of interesting as well. I don't have the speed that I had, like it's nullifying that. So notice I'm getting the wither effect right now, but I still have my regeneration, so that's all that matters. Regeneration will keep you alive. And so here we go. So now we're going through our phase. This is just a super easy thing to do since the guitar does work here. we can just use our AoE and take these guys out very quickly. By the way, there are 2 bosses that we're going to be taking on. This is the first wave, and then we'll be taking on the next tier. And this is just, yeah. As many times as I fought this thing, I love it. And the funny thing is, if you didn't actually notice, you are technically fighting yourself, because the Gaia is skinned as a darker version of you, which is just beautiful. Also, this is a great way to farm up witches if you didn't actually get that chance. Very, very easy to farm up everything, honestly. And there we go. So the Qatar definitely did this guy in, and this is what we're actually wanting right here. Very cool. And we got ourselves some Gaia spirits. This is going to allow us, by the way, to make more Gaia spirits, because we're going to need to craft this with a Terrasteel ingot to summon in the next tier boss. So now it's time for round 2. We're going to craft this together and make a Gaia steel ingot. And this is going to be a bit stronger of a boss. And I've definitely underestimated this boss before, and have definitely died to said boss before after making this ingot. Hopefully, though, that won't be the case, and we can go ahead and summon in the next one. Oh boy. Now, I did go ahead and make a backpack here, so that way all of the items that we get from this will collect into this. Of course, we didn't get those. But notice, this guy actually shoots these, like, piercing things. And this can be kind of painful, because they do quite a bit of damage, especially whenever you get hit with the wither effect. But we should be fine. Hopefully. I say should be, because I never know. But yes, this guy is a bit harder. It can be significantly harder. Oh boy, it's just weird that like our speed effect gets completely removed. That one's odd to me. And we should be actually able... No, I guess we know. Nope, we can't fly either. I was going to say, we used to be able to sort of fly a little bit. All that has been nerfed, which I don't mind. This has always been one of my favorite boss battles. Just because of it tries its hardest to nerf everything that you've tried to do to make yourself powerful. It tries to nerf it. And I love that. I do. But I have beat this guy several times in just the base mod itself. Which you would end up using a bunch of flowers, which are really, really fun to set up. Definitely not necessary, though, in a pack like this. Oh, I love this. Being able to insta-kill the Qatar is so powerful. They're not even an issue. Typically, you'd use a bubble that sort of pushes these away and then ends up killing them. Oh, man. It's so good. And I don't think you would even have to kill them, technically. It'll still push the wave on. This guy is almost done for. And there we go. Perfect. It's back down. All right. This is the second form. Hey, and get wrecked at the mercy of a dream. All of the stuff, by the way, ended up going in here. And with this one, we get a dice of fate. So that's exactly what we needed. And so now I have myself a dice of fate, and we also get a music disc from that soundtrack we were just listening to. But when I right-click this, we end up getting any of the rings. There's a bunch of different rings we can get. Thor is not too bad. My favorite one, of course, is Odin. It'll actually give you extra health, making these boss battles even easier. And of course, we also get some of the runes, which are very helpful once you get this guy up and running, and you can kill them much faster. Now, the Thor ring, while interesting, it is not going to be super helpful for us, because it basically extends the size of the Terra Shatterer. So if you were using that, it would just extend it out one more, which does make it quite large. But I think now, as the star is concerned, we essentially completed that whole section. And I think this is the only thing from Botania that's actually required. So the Gaia spirit itself is it. And it looks like we can make Gaia seeds, which is amazing. So I am definitely doing that. Oh, that is so crazy. And now I can make the max tier spreaders, making this setup right here insanely powerful. These spreaders are so fast, you can actually see the mana pools ticking up just visually. Typically, this is not something you can actually see increasing. And then this is also spreading between 4 pools, and it's doing this equally. So it would be able to fill up 1 pool in seconds. That's ridiculous. And so that was just about everything Botania progression-wise in a nutshell in one video. So I hope you guys did enjoy. Of course, if you do enjoy videos like these, be sure to click that subscribe button. If you haven't already, share it with your friends and give this video a huge thumbs up. And of course, guys, I will see you in the next one. And speaking of next one, I think it's time to thank the amazing supporter of today's video. And that amazing thanks is going to go out to the Vape God. Thank you so much, by the way, for your amazing support by choosing to support me over on the Discord by becoming a Discord premium member and supporting in one of the best ways possible. I thank you all so very much. I'll see you in the next one, and as always, thanks for watching. Bye!